Hello, my name is Stephen Hall and I'm CEO. I'm here to present the operational update that I gave at our recent AGM for those of you that were unable to attend. One important difference, you will see that our company is now called NH3 Clean Energy. This is because at the AGM, shareholders voted overwhelmingly to change the company's name to more appropriately reflect its strategic focus. The slides I'm going to talk through today will follow this format. And effectively, I'm going to, in each of the areas you see on the contents there, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been happening over the past 12 months and what we expect to happen over the next 12 months. Let's start with the project timeline. So this shows where we are today in terms of the full life cycle of the project, from its inception in early 2022 through concept validation, pre-feasibility, which we published in Q3 last year, to where we are today, rapidly approaching the end of pre-feed. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that we have pushed the start of feed back from the end of 2024 by 1 quarter to the end of Q1 2025. And that's simply because the commercial discussions that we are having are taking a little bit longer to finalize than we originally thought. And of course, as you can appreciate, we're not in control of the timeline there because the counterparty has their own processes to follow, in contrast to the technical work, which of course we can control the pace of. You'll also see on the timeline a data room in Q1 2025. The purpose of that data room is to be able to share all of the technical work that we've done, the commercial agreements with potential strategic partners, so that they can have a really good look at the project and make an informed decision regarding their potential entry to the project. Let's look at industry development. So if we take a step back and look back at the last 12 months, what we've seen is that market confidence has continued to grow. We've seen successful commercial scale co-firing of ammonia in a coal-fired power station, and construction's underway to enable commercial operations. We've seen the world's first ship-to-ship transfer of ammonia at Anchorage, and that was completed up in the Pilbara, just where we're looking to establish our bunkering business. We're seeing what I'd call increased pragmatism, with gas-based reforming plus CCS really being seen more and more as the credible near to mid-term solution for clean ammonia. And that's in no small part because of the increasing costs of electrolysis-based alternatives. And sort of consistent with those, we're seeing investors taking action. You know, if you like, on the positive side of the ledger, we have Woodside's acquisition of OCI and its 1.1 million ton gas-based clean ammonia project, and that's in the US. And there are a lot of parallels between that project and our project. Gas is the feedstock, using third-party CCS, using the same autothermal reforming technology and targeting the same two markets that we are, displacing coal in power, displacing diesel and fuel oil in shipping. If you like, on the negative side of the ledger, we've also seen people walk away from electrolysis-based projects, and Fortescue and Origin would be two examples of that. So I guess what's encouraging from our perspective is that these developments have really validated the strategy that we took a year or two ago to choose existing technology to site our plant where we have in the Pilbara and so forth. If we turn our minds forward, we're expecting to see an increase in market confidence, and that's really because, you know, co-firing ammonia is really now moving from concept to reality. We're seeing greater collaboration along the supply chain to really securely establish that link between the producer outside of Japan, for instance, and then the user in Japan. We're expecting the first award of Japanese contract for difference incentives to be awarded this year, and we're expecting a refinement of the South Korean procurement processes also. It's probably worth noting there's fiscal uncertainty in other supply locations, and particularly in the US, where the change of administration has a pretty uncertain impact on the Inflation Reduction Act. Trump has said that he's going to repeal the act, but of course what that means in practice is really not very clear. And we're also seeing momentum building for clean ammonia bunkering in the Pilbara. We're seeing increased collaboration between industry and the Pilbara Ports Authority, and we're of course part of that. Ammonia is really emerging as the preferred clean bunker fuel for the Pilbara, over and above alternatives, which might be methanol or LNG and so forth. And we expect to see increasing orders for ammonia fuel bulk carriers in the coming months. The first have already been ordered. Turning to government, we've seen a significant increase in clarity over the past 12 months, and incentives that are really trying to incentivize progress. If we look at Australia, the Future Gas Strategy has been published, clearly recognising the importance of gas and CCS to Australia's energy transition. And we've seen the hydrogen production tax incentive proposed and the consultation paper issued, and of course we've provided some feedback on that. More locally in Western Australia, recently the West Australian government granted $15 million to AGM to support the development of an onshore CO2 transmission pipeline to link producers of CO2 like ourselves with the sequestration sites where we're looking to sequester the CO2. So that's clearly a positive development. And in Japan, the legislation has been passed to allow the Japanese government to award the clean ammonia incentives, and that's the Hydrogen Society Promotion Act. Moving forward, the pattern you'll see from NH3 is really one of increasing engagement as the government looks to make some quite important decisions. So in Australia, clarity on the parameters of the proposed hydrogen production tax incentive and the necessary legislation hopefully being implemented. In WA, we're anticipating inclusion of our project in the government's lead agency framework. That's the subject of ongoing dialogue at the moment. And there's some important decisions to make on multi-user infrastructure in the Maitland to Dampier infrastructure corridor. So that's the corridor that connects our site to the port where we export the clean ammonia. As I mentioned before, in Japan, the first award of the CFD incentives is expected. And for NH3, we'll be increasing our engagement with government entities, so departments such as DISA, DQ, DFAT, and various government-backed financing agencies, both in Australia, such as NAIF and EFA, and also overseas agencies as appropriate. It's been a busy 12 months from the engineering perspective, and really it's all about getting ready for feed entry. Reducing technical uncertainty, so the design basis has been set, the core process design completed. We've simplified the scope in several areas, which is advantageous from a cost perspective and de-risk execution. And we've got increasing confidence in the design and the costing, thanks to the fact that we now have a full process model build, we've confirmed the mass balance, and we've got an ongoing vendor engagement to really nail down those costs. And we've optimized our designs for emissions. So we understand the trade-offs, and the trade-offs in particular between process efficiency, energy efficiency, and emissions intensity. I shall just draw your attention to the little map at the bottom right. That is a preliminary site layout. So you can see that our 40-hectare site can comfortably accommodate both phase 1 and phase 2 of our project. So train 1 pertains to phase 1 and train 2 would be the future phase 2. The other point worth noticing is you'll see just to the north of train 1, pipeline corridor. That is the infrastructure corridor in which the gas pipeline sits, so the source of our gas. That's the infrastructure corridor that gives us access to the Port of Dampier and each of the 2 sequestration sites we're considering. So we really couldn't be any closer to that access point. Moving forward, we're looking to complete pre-feed, obviously, in the very early part of the next 12 months. Run the data room to support strategic partners, evaluate the project, and then really turn our minds to executing feed. And we've got a very clear strategy for that. We want to go in with a very well-defined feed scope, but we're defining it in a way that preserves our flexibility to adjust emissions intensity. The reason for that is there's still some uncertainty around customers' emissions requirements and the requirements to qualify for government incentives. And we want to be able to adjust our emissions to make the most of both of those variables. The graphic at the bottom is really just showing that we have a plan for feed. It's a pretty detailed plan. I guess the important point that it's deliberately broken into a number of phases. The reason for that is so that we can use the results of each phase to refine our approach to the subsequent phases. And it's the approach we've taken through pre-feed, and it's been very successful in ensuring that our work is always focused and that we're avoiding any unnecessary work. Commercially, again, a busy 12 months, and it's really been about bringing the different parts together and building alignment between the parties involved. We're very well placed in terms of land, in terms of water. The indication of supply that we agreed with Chevron recently for over 60% of our gas was a huge step forward. In terms of port, we've confirmed the capacity available, and we're in ongoing discussions with the Pilbara Port Authority. CO2 pipeline, confidential discussions with a third party, and so progressing well there. In terms of CCS, we are in confidential discussions with each of the projects we're considering, and again, indicative pricing provided. And in terms of offtake, we've executed the MOU with Oceana to provide ammonia as a fuel for bulk carriers. If we turn our minds forward, it's really about completing the jigsaw. So bringing together the balance of remaining provisional agreements. So that's around the balance of gas supply, CO2 transmission, CO2 sequestration, and offtake. The entry of strategic partners, and again, as I mentioned, that will be facilitated by the Q1 2025 data room. There are a number of additional infrastructure synergies that we are actively exploring, and those will fall into shape, we expect, over the course of the next few months. We'll increase the definition of the existing agreements as we move towards definitive contracts to support our final investment decision. So we are looking to have those definitive contracts in place Q4 2025 with the appropriate CPs, one of which would be our subsequent FID. In terms of financing and capital market, the last 12 months have really been one of growing shareholder value. I mean, we're pleased that Hexagon's share price has increased over 200%, or a factor of 3, if you like, over the last 12 months. But we do feel that the market doesn't yet understand the project value. And of course, we need to do better at communicating that. Some of the value increase that we've had, is definitely due to the strategic goals that we've achieved. And we've also significantly increased our shareholder and investor engagement to be more effective at getting our message across. And we were delighted recently that Curran & Co. Have initiated coverage of the company with a desk note, which we see as a significant step forward. In terms of financing, we continue to carefully manage our cash and stage our work so that we get value recognition for major milestones before fundraising, I should say, wherever possible. In terms of what we're going to be doing over the next 12 months to continue to grow shareholder value, in terms of equity, we aim to increase institutional investors' share of the register. And we expect to have an increased frequency of announcements, investor presentations, media and the like, to really help increase the project and NH3 as a company's profile. You'll also see through 2025 increasing engagement with our potential strategic funding partners as the planned data room and FID process provide access to the information that they need to make a decision whether to invest in the project. And we'll continue our engagement with governments and government-related bodies in terms of access to grants and funding as they become available. So to bring all of that back to the timeline, we're rapidly approaching the end of pre-FEED. When we look at the next 12 months, what we're expecting is ammonia co-firing to move from concept to reality, and the momentum for clean ammonia bunkering to really take off in the Pilbara. We will be increasing our engagement with governments and associated entities, and there are some pretty important government decisions to be made. Internally, we'll be completing our pre-FEED, we'll be opening the data room, we'll be executing FEED. We'll complete the remaining provisional agreements that we have. We'll be looking to bring strategic partners into the project, and towards the end of 2025, we're looking to have the definitive contracts in place that we would need to support FID with the appropriate CPs. And a sort of ongoing theme through the year will be increased investor engagement, progression of strategic financing. And the original presentation I presented at the AGM then unveiled the new branding in terms of the company name and so forth. Of course, that's been underpinning this presentation. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward with engaging you shortly as we continue to make progress on our project.